So I took this letter out of the Fontainebleau drawing to show you how it's made and what we can learn from it. So I'm going to show you all the anchor points. So as you can see, you have a structure that is fairly comparable to what we saw earlier with the Halloween drawing. But the difference here is that instead of having one point by curve, we have 2 points that go together. You have them here, you have them here, you have them here, here, here. You have a pair of points that go together. The reason why it works this way is that this time we're not using a stroke like last time. If you remember, we had a simple stroke and no filling, and now we have a complex shape with no stroke and which is filled with a color. So we're not relying on Illustrator to create the stroke for us. We are making it ourselves, which means that we have to create both sides of the stroke. Therefore, use 1 point at each side of the curve. So if you look a little more carefully, you can see that most of the pair of points are parallel. They're facing each other, like these ones here too, and that the inner point has shorter Bezier handles than the outer point on the outside of the curve. Here you have a longer Bezier handles than here. It's the same here. This Bezier handle is shorter than this one. Same here. And it's even the same for the points that are not facing each other, but we will talk about them a little bit later. So this is what creates the transition between this thin line and this thick line. If I have a longer Bezier handle, it creates the width here. And if I have a shorter Bezier handle, it's what will create something wider just after. So by pairing the points together, making them face each other, and then playing on the length of the Bezier handles, I can create nice transitions without having to add many more points. You have to remember, it's like last time, we want the least amount of Bezier handles so the thing remains flowing and fluid and looks great. So the only thing you have to remember is that we're doing quite the same thing. If I had done this the same way as I did with the previous tutorial, I would have put my point fairly at the same place, but just now we have two sides, so we have a pair of points, and then we play with the length to have a transition, to transition from thin to thick and from thick to thin. On some places you may have noticed that I have points that are a bit shifted from each other, like here and here, which creates something a little more dynamic, because if I make those points face each other, here I have something like this. It would be something like this, but then the tip of my vector lacks dynamic. You see? So I'm gonna go back, and when I do something like this where I shift my point, I can end up on a nice tip. Same here, I end up with a nice tip here. So this will happen a lot when you are at the end of your stroke and you want to end up with a thin tip, a thin nib. So now that we have seen that, I'm gonna show you with a whole new drawing. We're gonna do it from scratch by following these simple rules.